If you like the Young Turks podcast, I think you'll love a lot of the podcasts on the TYT network. Old School, it's one of my favorites, one of the favorites for a lot of the listeners. Please check that out, subscribe, share it. That makes a big difference, and give it a 5-star rating. Thank you. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. You're on Kasparian with you guys having a good mood. Okay, look at this one. All right.
What?
Look at this one.
God.
Okay. Oh, hero to women everywhere.
What are you talking about? I'm not in a bad mood. I'm actually in a totally fine mood. I feel super chill. And you're feeling hyper, so
I am. I'm ready to go.
It's grating on my nerves.
Okay, no. You know what I am? I'm not gonna lie to you, okay? I'm rolling thunder. All right, so listen, we got a hell of a show for you guys. In fact, we got a hell of a lot of shows for you guys tonight. I got a great candidate on the conversation. I got Ryan Grimm. We're gonna have a fun post game, and then Old School. Look, don't be too disappointed that it's John Idarola with me.
Oh my God.
I love playing bus nuts. I love it.
So under the bus. Poor John Idarola.
No. In all seriousness, I'm super looking forward to talking to John.
Is it just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
Let me just give you a quick note about John. Yesterday was one of the craziest days for me. I had a lot on my plate. I wouldn't have eaten lunch if it weren't for John. He included me in his lunch order, and I was able to eat.
Oh,
John
Johnny
is such a good
Pie!
guy.
What a nice guy! You want to kind of give him a nugget, don't you? Anyway, so look, I'm going to tell you about my rolling epiphanies and how I have incredibly sound mental health now. I am a very stable genius. No, seriously, don't miss Old School tonight. Somebody had a really nice comment in the get together that we did down in Houston, saying that some of the stories I told about, how to feel better psychologically, etc., and all the epiphanies I've had actually really helped her. And I was, and you shouldn't have encouraged me like that, but I really appreciated it. So we'll give you an hour and a half of that for you guys on Old School. TYT.com/join to take part. Now we do have, of course, very serious stories that we're going to get to. The second one is amazing. I know, look, it's nearly impossible to be amazed by Donald Trump anymore, but the 26 lies he told in New Mexico are unreal. And the way that he talks about Latinos and Hispanics in this country is, he makes Joe Biden look in touch. By the way, super last thing, and we'll talk more about it in the post game. Last night, I told my kids about corn pop. Number one, they didn't believe it either.
Of course not.
Okay. Yeah. And number two, when I said corn pop, Joy, my 6-year-old, who would quickly correct me and say 6 3/4. Literally LOL'd. I said, oh, and there was a gang leader named Corn Pop. I said it straight like that. She's like, come on.
She is so sassy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, she knows.
She knows.
Okay, all right, lots to get to. All
yeah,
right, let's
so
do
I
it.
have a few announcements of my own. First off, shop TYT, it's awesome. It's a good way to support this company and get some nice swag as a result. So we're trying to get people to submit their climate change designs. We're looking to put out a t-shirt that features a climate change design, and we're crowdsourcing this.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so if you have any ideas or if you want to submit your design, just go to tyt.com/notice. We will be compensating. We are gonna compensate you guys similar to how employees are compensated here at TYT. You're gonna receive $100.
Okay, sure.
Or $100 credit for the Shop TYT store.
Why would anybody take the credit? I mean, look.
You're the worst. You're the worst.
Look, I want you to take the credit at shoptyt.com, but I mean, $100 cash, you could also use this shop. Should be like 120 in credit. You see what I'm saying?
I mean,
anyway.
you run this place, so.
Well, you see, I like to keep expectations low.
Yeah, well. Also on TYT, we have Jim Gaffigan coming on soon. He'll be on September 18th, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific, so check that out. And then finally, one other way you can support TYT is by joining as a member on YouTube. YouTube as a platform has a membership option, and if you join, you just have to click that little button that says join near our videos. You will get extra perks in the comment section, for instance. You get to use host emojis, so check that
Johnny Pie. Okay, so if you're watching on YouTube, it's a little blue button right underneath the video. Boom, 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 boom. Look, even if you don't want the extra content and all the post games and the extra videos for members, $1.99. Come on, you can do that. It really, really helps the show, and God knows we need it. Okay, but on the t-shirt stuff, guys, I want to crowdsource the entire show and the entire network. We're just doing it one piece at a time. I love it when you guys design the shirts, and I wear your shirts more than I wear anybody else's. Sorry, graphics department. But seriously, you guys do a great job. So please send in shirts, and we'd love to create win-wins for you guys. ShopTYT.com. And on Gaffigan, I watched his latest movie, and that's what we're partly going to talk about tomorrow. American Dreamer. It was really haunting. God, it turns out he's a great actor. I was like, I didn't see that coming. So anyway, that's tomorrow's conversation. Okay.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get to the news. We have an update on Saudi Arabia. Iran's supreme leader has said that he will not negotiate or have a conversation with Donald Trump or officials within his administration under any and all circumstances, especially following the US's insistence that Iran was behind the bombing of a Saudi oil facility. At the same time, though, there are interesting conflicting statements coming from Donald Trump as well. As we had reported earlier, he had tweeted that the United States is locked and loaded in response to Iran, but he is changing his tune a little bit, probably because there's still a little bit of disagreement as to whether or not the United States has the concrete evidence that Iran was behind this attack. But Trump also has a lot of love and affection for the Saudis, and he explains why in this next clip.
Have you promised the Saudis that the U.S. will protect them in this case?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I haven't promised the Saudis that. We have to sit down with the Saudis and work something out. That was an attack on Saudi Arabia, and that wasn't an attack on us. But we would certainly help them. They've been a great ally. They spend $400 billion in our country over the last number of years, $400 billion. And they're not ones that, unlike some countries where they want terms and conditions. They want to say, can we borrow the money at 0% for the next 400 years? No, Saudi Arabia pays cash. They've helped us out from the standpoint of jobs and all of the other things. And they've actually helped us. I would call and I would say, listen, our oil prices, our gasoline's too high. You got to let more go. You know that. I would call the Crown Prince and I'd say, you got to help us out. You got to get some more. And all of a sudden the oil starts flowing and the gasoline prices are down. No other president can do that.
So Trump is known for saying the quiet parts out loud. He always references our economic ties to Saudi Arabia for his reasons of essentially letting them get away with murder in some cases, which is what happened to a Washington Post journalist due to Mohammed bin Salman. But there are also personal financial interests at play that rarely get any type of media attention whatsoever. Mehdi Hassan over at The Intercept wrote an excellent piece that details some of those ties to Saudi Arabia. But I also want to remind you, just yesterday, Trump had tweeted, quote, waiting to hear from the kingdom, meaning Saudi Arabia, and under what terms we would proceed. So he is just waiting on Saudi Arabia to tell him, hey, what should we do? How do we move forward? So this whole notion that Trump has any type of foreign policy ideology is ridiculous. And I know sometimes we have this discussion about how his instinct is to be less hawkish, but at the end of the day, money rules all of his decisions. And if Saudi Arabia holds any type of financial relationship over his head to push him into war with Iran, I have no doubt that Trump will move forward with war in Iran.
So lots to get to there. First, I want to quote the Tulsi Gabbard tweet I paraphrased yesterday. She said, Trump awaits instructions from his Saudi masters. Having our country act as Saudi Arabia's bitch is not America first. That goes to Mehdi Hassan's point at The Intercept. He said, do you remember back in 2009 when Obama seemed to maybe bow a tiny bit when he met the Saudi king out of politeness and custom, right? And Fox News and the right wing went nuts. Oh, look at him doing whatever the Saudis want, bowing to their Saudi king. Oh, that's because is it because he's too friendly to Muslims?
Yeah, that's what they argued Obama was doing.
Meanwhile, Trump goes over there. He's like, "Oh, you want to chop up one of our reporters, dismember him, and mutilate him? No problem. I'm getting paid. What difference does it make?" Well, anyway, I'm waiting your instructions on whether I should start a war with a different country and fight that war on your behalf. Okay. And where are you, Fox News? Where are you, Sean Hannity? Donald Trump is bowing down to the Muslim dictator of Saudi Arabia, and yet you slavishly go and kiss his ass night in and night out. So that's who these Republicans are. I want to give you that quote that Anna referred to. Trump had said this earlier before he became president. He said, Saudi Arabia, they buy apartments from me. They spend $40 million, $50 million. Am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much. So it's not just that they're spending billions of dollars on making our defense contractors happy, who then funnel campaign contributions to Donald Trump. It's also that they personally enrich him. So that is why he is their bitch and is now ready to start a war on their behalf with our soldiers. So when your sons and daughters come back in coffins, understand at least Donald Trump got paid.
So this story has some twists and turns, which I want to flesh out in just a minute. But I also want to read a portion of Mehdi Hassan's piece in The Intercept, because he writes, the Saudis have been bailing out Trump since the 1990s and have continued to do so since he entered the White House. So again, there are the personal financial motives for Donald Trump, and then there are the economic incentives when it comes to the United States. That is the reason why historically US presidents have been willing to work with Saudi Arabia, even though they have been problematic. They have been involved in the 9/11 terrorist attacks, but they'll look the other way when it comes to economic interests. Now, with that said, the twist to this story is that both the Pentagon and the Saudis are arguing that there still isn't enough concrete evidence to pin this on Iran. So let me start with the Pentagon. Pentagon officials, still under the leadership of an acting defense secretary since the departure of James Mattis, have recommended a restrained response to the recent attacks on Saudi oil facilities, arguing against a potentially costly conflict with Iran, and told reporters that the administration would need to find a valid legal basis to take action. Now let's move on to Saudi Arabia. So in Riyadh, the Saudi military offered its first assessment on Monday, which stopped short, far short of accusing Iran of orchestrating these strikes. Saudi officials said the US didn't provide enough proof to conclude that the attack was launched from Iran. The kingdom has asked United Nations experts to help determine who was responsible for the airstrikes. So let's just stop for a second and consider the fact that Iran is the arch nemesis of the Saudis, and they're the ones who are, practicing restraint in this case, which is incredible.
Yeah, so it's unclear at this point if the Saudis are like, do we really want to go to war? Or if they're saying, oh yeah, we definitely want to go to war, but we don't want to seem like we started it because that's one Muslim country attacking another, and we're pretending to represent all Muslims in Saudi Arabia. So why don't we get our dogs in America to attack Iran for us, and we'll put out some quotes with restraint right before the war, so we could say later, well, I didn't do it. I mean, it was that crazy Donald Trump. After I gave him millions of dollars, he did it for me. Oh my God, I didn't want to go to war with Iran. Trump twisted my arm. So it is certainly possible that that's the game that they're playing. But meanwhile, as we explained yesterday, there's Democrats like Chris Coons going on Fox News saying, oh, I mean, we should be ready for war. I mean, this is provocation, etc. As always, when neoconservatives and corrupt people like Donald Trump and Mohammed bin Salman need votes for a war or just rhetorical support for a war, corporate Democrats are there to save the day and to help them and give them that support. And then they pretend to be our colleagues and people that are on our side. They're not. But those defense contractors don't just make Republicans rich, they also make Democrats rich. And one more thing, when Trump talked in the first clip that we played for you, he talked about, hey, I called a Saudi king and he lowers oil prices for me. He increases supply. Again, you're not supposed to say that out loud. We know that that has been American policy for decades now. And he says, I'm the only president who could do that. No, every president has done that. And that's why we have the deal that we have with the Saudis. Otherwise, why prop up a government that is basically the equivalent of ISIS? They also decapitate people, and not just the reporters that they're upset at. They do decapitations and cut off hands, etc., on a regular basis. They believe in the most extreme form of Sharia law, just like ISIS does. But hey, every once in a while, a US president calls them and they help lower oil prices. In this case, Trump is basically saying, hey, I got a year before the election, and they're helping me win the election by keeping oil prices low. So since it's to my personal benefit, I'm gonna send your kids to go die over in Iran.
Now, I also want to just mention that Trump himself is sending mixed signals as to whether or not he wants any type of military intervention in Iran. He said during that same press conference that he would like to avoid war with Iran. So, I mean, he's a wild card. He's always been a wild card. You have no idea what he's gonna do. He'll order an airstrike against Iran and then literally call it off right before it's supposed to happen. So, any analysis about his strategy is kind of worthless because there is no strategy. It all really depends on what his financial interests are, who was the last person he spoke to, and whether or not the Saudis are giving him orders that he must follow because he's concerned about his own financial interests.
Yeah, and guys, that's why Trump is so dangerous as a president, because no one, including Donald Trump, knows what he's gonna do.
Right.
So it depends on the day, it depends on the hour. So if you think he has some sort of instincts to not start wars in the Middle East, well, he said that half the time. The other half the time he said locked and loaded, or as he once said, cocked and loaded. And so he doesn't know himself. So is he gonna start a war tomorrow? Well, tune in tomorrow and see what Donald Trump's insane, very unstable mind came up with. So in a situation like that, when you're playing Russian roulette with the world, that is not a good place to be.
Well, Trump also had a rally in New Mexico where he professed his love for Hispanic. And that's literally what he said. So when we come back from the break, we'll give you the details on that story.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
And more.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Turkosaurus Rex writes in in the member section. Have I mentioned tyt.com/join? Anyway, I'll have whatever Cenk is having.
Yeah, what did meth? Did you take meth before the show today?
Hey, be cool, be cool.
I want some of that energy.
No, it is a traditional Turkish remedy called coffee.
You got Turkish coffee?
No, I had no coffee, but I actually can't stand Turkish coffee, but I like regular coffee with plenty of cream. Anyway, Brent DeCorn says, I have the most chill cat ever sitting on my desk. But as soon as the Trump video started, he began hissing at my computer screen.
Good cat.
To which I say, attaboy.
Well, he's worried because Trump likes to grab pussy, so.
Internet. Interesting.
That word is okay to use.
Yes, no, I hear you. Engineer writes in, I love that Pentagon thinks that a war with Iran would be potentially costly. It must be nice sitting on an $800 billion budget with no conscience and no sense of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. But remember guys, in this case, the Pentagon is the one pumping the brakes. And they're saying, Trump, hey, yeah, knucklehead, you have no idea what things cost. Remember when you thought we could just 10x our nuclear warhead supply, which would actually bankrupt the country?
Right.
Going to war with Iran would actually cost a lot of money.
By the way, it's not even necessarily Trump who's itching for war with Iran. It's the people he has surrounded himself with within the administration, including Steve Mnuchin, Mike Pompeo. They're the ones who are like, no, we know for sure, it's Iran, we gotta do it.
Yeah.
Come on.
You know, the other day I was thinking about this. Again, I gotta save some of this for the post game and for old school and for members, but about how many neoconservatives are there in the country? Like 7 or 12. Have you ever met a neoconservative in your real life? Never. No one has ever met a neoconservative that isn't on television, right? And so just like 17 people max have driven us into endless wars.
Yep.
So anyway, back to the fun stuff real quick on Twitter. Everybody's having fun. Nerd on the internet writes in, if we weren't already so familiar with how Cenk is when he's high, we think he was high right now. God, is someone allowed to be in a good mood?
No, I'm happy you're in a good mood. I'm not complaining about it. I find it amusing.
I'll take it.
Okay.
And the last one, the deaf bartender says, it says, I am loving you two today, Cenk and Anna. You guys are amazing. Why, thank you. We appreciate it, Mr. Deaf Bartender. Or miss, I don't know. I do know a certain bartender who's kicking ass in Congress, so.
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's keep going.
All right, let's move on.
He happens to be Hispanic. But I've never quite figured it out because he looks more like a wasp than I do.
That's Donald Trump at a rally in New Mexico, and he really wanted to drive the point home that he is friendly toward Hispanics. He loves Hispanics, and the individual he was referring to is Steve Cortez. He's gonna talk about Steve Cortez a little more in videos that we're about to show you. But nonetheless, I do wanna give you one quick statistic that's relevant as we go through all these thoughts or these videos. Trump's disapproval rating among Hispanics stood at 79% in a Pew Research Center poll last month. So Hispanics, not a fan of Donald Trump for obvious reasons.
So he's in New Mexico. He said at one point, how do I lose New Mexico? Explain that one.
And he did lose New Mexico. He lost by 8 points in 2016, and it was because he was focusing on Hispanics.
Yeah, well, you can explain it by the fact
way.
that 79% of Hispanics can't stand you, and New Mexico is 50% Hispanic. There, I just explained it.
He's a very stable genius, you already knew that. All right, so with that said, let's take a look at some videos from this rally.
Another great friend of mine, somebody that was on CNN and they didn't like him because he was too positive on Trump. Can you believe it? He happens to be Hispanic. But I've never quite figured it out because he looks more like a wasp than I do. So I haven't figured that one out. But I'll tell you what, there is nobody that loves this country more or Hispanic more than Steve Cortez. Steve. Nobody loves the Hispanics more. What do you like more, the country or the Hispanics? He says the country, I don't know. I may have to go for the Hispanics, to be honest with you. We got a lot of Hispanics.
I mean, look, Trump claims that no one loves Hispanics more, but he hasn't met me.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
But nonetheless,
okay.
So he's talking about Steve Cortez. Let's go to graphic 2, because this is who he's referring to. I gotta be honest with you guys, I had never really heard of Steve Cortez until I debated him on Cuomo's show.
Oh, right, you debated him, that's right, that's right. So he's a Trump supporter, and he's also, as Trump would call him, a Hispanic. which actually is a little bit better than the way Trump phrased it.
Right.
Oh, no one likes the Hispanic more than Steve Cortez. Well, okay, if you're Hispanic, you might like Hispanics like yourself and the rest of your family. That makes sense. But actually, out of all the absurd things he said in that particular clip, and we got a lot more where that came from, the one that was the most absurd was, what do you like more, the country or Hispanics? Why is that? No, why is that an or? Because you see, he views Hispanics as an other.
Yeah, as the others.
So they're not part of the country. That's why the question of, do you like the country or Hispanics?
Yeah,
so that's damning. When he said, I can't tell if he looks more Hispanic or more like a WASP, I don't mind that. It's just, how does a person look, their shape? It's another person saying it might be offensive. Donald Trump is like, in the bottom quartile of offensive things that he has said. And if he just left it at that, it would be no big deal. But when you view Hispanics as something that is foreign and outside of the real country, that betrays your real point of view on how you view Latinos here.
Well, he's not done yet. Let's take a look at the next clip.
At the center of America's drug crisis, this is where the Hispanics know it better than anybody. People said, oh, the Hispanics won't like a wall. I said, I think they're gonna love it. They won't like border security. I think they're gonna love it. You know why? Because you understand it better than other people. But at the whole center of this crisis is the drugs that are pouring in, and you understand that when other people don't understand it. Every day, dangerous criminal cartels smuggle vast quantities of lethal narcotics across your southern border.
Wow, I really think this rally and approach to reach out to Hispanic voters is going to work out for him.
Yeah. So
I'm sure they're going to love that.
A minor point and a major point. The minor point is there's a couple of Latinos behind him, and there's a couple of white folks behind him, and the white folks are like, oh yeah, they understand the drugs, they really do. And you see one of the guys in the background like shaking his head like this, and I have no idea what he means by that. He might be thinking, oh, the drugs, they're terrible, and I agree with Trump, or he might be thinking, no, we don't understand it better than anyone else. He does it near the end. So in the beginning, as you see, he's shaking his head, or nodding his head. But guys, at some point, walk out. Right? I mean, how much of this are you gonna take? It's incredibly embarrassing.
I gotta be honest. I mean, let's put the video back up as B-roll because no one behind him really looks happy or excited. In fact, the young woman on the lower right-hand side looks like she's crying. The woman on the second row who's next to the guy on the left-hand side, she looks like she's kind of disgusted by it. I don't know. I mean, look, we're just guessing what they're thinking or what they're feeling. I don't know if they're actually supporters. I mean, obviously they specifically strategically place people behind Trump during these rallies.
So in case you don't know that, that's the most relevant portion of that, which is they put, if you remember how he said, oh, there's my African American in a rally from a couple of years ago. That guy came out this week and said, I no longer support Trump or the Republican Party because it turns out they're racist. A little late to the party, okay, but at least he recognized it. But they find their 3 Hispanic Americans and put them behind him. I don't know if they're paid or not because he has done that in previous Trump rallies. But again, that's the minor point. Let's go to the major point. His mind is littered with stereotypes. So when he went to speak in front of Republican Jewish leaders, he said, I mean, nobody likes to renegotiate more than this room, right? Because in his mind, Jews will back out of a deal, Jews are backstabbing, they'll renegotiate, and they're crafty, and all the crazy tropes and stereotypes he's got in his head, right? When it comes to Latinos, he's like, well, nobody understands drugs better than Latinos. That's his going assumption. And so, but he'll turn around and say, and his supporters will say, no, what do you mean he's racist? He just told you, he loves the Hispanic, right? No, guys, you don't get it, man. The guy's brain is filled with this sewage of racist stereotypes. That's why when the hurricane hits Puerto Rico, he implies that they're lazy and that it was their fault.
Well, look, people who would make that argument aren't being honest, and they know. They know, because it's not about one rally where he says one nice thing, what he determines to be a nice thing about Hispanics. It's about his entire history and everything that he said against the Hispanic community over and over again. In fact, wouldn't it be awesome if we had a super senior producer like J.R. Jackson to put together a mashup of all those instances? Oh, I guess we do. So why don't we go to that mashup? This is Donald Trump talking about Hispanics.
We love our Hispanics. Get out and vote. The asylum program is a scam. You know, I look at some of these asylum people, they're gang members. They're not afraid of anything. You look at this guy, you say, wow, that's a tough cookie. I am very fearful for my life. I am very worried that I will be accosted. And they say, I fear for my life. They're the ones that are causing fear for life. No, he'll do the accosting. They're bringing drugs. This judge is of Mexican heritage. I'm building a wall, okay? I'm building a wall. They're bringing crime. This is an invasion. When you see these caravans starting out with 20,000 people, that's an invasion.
But he's American. He's an American.
He's of Mexican heritage, and he's very proud of it. We're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. They're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
If you are saying he can't do his job because of his race, is that not the definition of racism?
I don't think so at all. We love our Hispanics. Get out and vote.
Look, that was devastating. But even the sentence, we love our Hispanics, is deeply problematic. If you can't see why, you're like, these social justice warriors, they nitpick everything. What is our Hispanics? It implies that they're not part of us, right? It implies almost ownership. Like these Hispanics that are ours, the ones that aren't ours is problematic. In fact, the great majority of them. I don't know if he means R as in the Republican Hispanics.
Probably, I don't know. I don't know what he means. What I do know is that, okay, his words are one thing. And you're right, there are some on the right who will just brush it off as social justice warriors who are offended by language. But it's not just about language, it's about the actions behind his language. It's about what he has done and how he has not only dehumanized, but brutalized innocent people at the border who are seeking asylum. More than 24 of them have died under his watch in cages that he put them in. Half of them were kids, not half of them, about a quarter of them were children. So it's just disgusting when people try to brush it off as, it's just a bunch of social justice warriors who are offended by language. No, this isn't a Bill Burr comedy special, okay? This is real life. This is Donald Trump, the president of the United States, brutalizing and dehumanizing actual human beings to the point where they literally die. That's what this is about.
And then let's do the classic, what if it was Obama? And look, if you're a MAGA guy, just try to be honest with yourself for the first time in your life. If Obama had come out and said, we love our whites. I mean, look, there's a lot of the whites are rapists and criminals and
mass shooters.
Yeah, I guess there's some good people on the white side too. And look, we love our whites. The whites are good. The whites are good. But we gotta watch out for them and be careful about the whites. But don't worry, guys. I just told you I love our whites. What do you think your reaction would be? You would go nuts. You would lose your mind, right? And you know that. You know that what I'm saying is 100% true. So when Trump says it about Hispanics, the reason you don't mind is because you're not Hispanic, and you think, yeah, that those are our Hispanics, and a lot of them are dangerous, unlike us good white people. What does that make you?
So I want to pivot to a different part of the same story, because there were there was the racial component, but there was also 26 instances where Donald Trump lied. So during Donald Trump's rally in New Mexico, he told 26 lies. At least 26 lies that we know about so far. Now, CNN fact-checked him. Daniel Dale specifically looked into some of the claims that Donald Trump made, and I want to read some of these fact checks for you. We're not going to go through all of them, but the ones that really stood out. So, for instance, he boasted that he was the one who got the Veterans Choice Healthcare Program passed, saying, quote, "They've tried to get that for 45 years. They haven't been able to get it, but I'm good at getting things." In reality, the program was created in 2014 in a bill signed by President Barack Obama.
So this actually fits into two different categories of lies that he likes to tell often. One is he likes to pretend oftentimes that he's progressive. We'll give you a couple more examples that he just said yesterday. So this is actually the government looking out for veterans, and something that the Democrats often push and a lot of times the Republicans resist, famously with 9/11 responders as well as veterans. And Jon Stewart had to fight them, et cetera. And finally, Mitch McConnell caving to the public pressure on the 9/11 responders. But similar things have applied to veterans. Some Republicans have been good on it, John McCain. But actually, you know who John McCain worked with to get veterans more and more healthcare and benefits overall was Bernie Sanders. So it is largely a progressive fight for our veterans. Trump jumps in and goes, "Oh no, it was me. It was me. I'm the one who did it." And it's not remotely true. And the second category it falls under is him taking credit for things Obama did. Even though he says Obama's the worst and he's made the country terrible and we have to make it great again, right? But hey, the unemployment is really low. Well, that was Obama. The stock market is booming. Well, that was Obama. The veterans bill in this case, Obama. He does it again and again, and this one's brazen. He didn't do the bill at all. He didn't sign it. Obama signed it well before he was in office. But the guy's a pathological liar. He just literally cannot help himself.
And the real question is whether or not people are privy to these fact checks, whether or not they're privy to the fact that he's lying about these things. I mean, he can just go ahead and say whatever he wants during these rallies. And do you think that his supporters are gonna go look for fact checks?
Yeah.
You think they're gonna Google his claims to see whether or not he's telling the truth? That's why it's so problematic and why there's this disconnect between what's really going on in the economy and what his voters think is going on with the economy, right? And it's frustrating because you'll fact check them, or you'll fact check him specifically, and you'll give people evidence for what's really going on, and they'll just brush you off as either an elitist, that happened a lot in 2016, but more importantly, as fake news. I mean, he has framed the entire discussion from the standpoint of anyone who's against me is fake news, and all of his supporters buy it hook, line, and sinker.
In fact, they use that same face that you saw Trump using in the video that we rolled, and also the poster, if you saw it in the corner of this. Like, yeah, he lies all the time. So what? There's that face. Who cares? Who cares?
Well, I know that our audience actually does care about the truth, so let's go through a few more of these fact checks. During his New Mexico rally, Trump said, "We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions. The Republicans will always do that." This promise has already been proven false. Trump and Republicans who have tried to pass bills that would have weakened protections for people with pre-existing conditions are now trying to get the courts to declare Obamacare void without a plan to replace those pre-existing condition protections if their lawsuit succeeds.
And now remember also, before Obamacare, the pre-existing conditions and being banned for them was the norm. And Republicans tried like hell to make sure that Obamacare didn't pass, that no version of it passed, and no part of it passed, including protections against pre-existing conditions. So they're all on the record as voting against it, 100%. Then after it passes, they try dozens of times to repeal it with no replacement, and now they're going to court saying, no, we don't want pre-existing condition protections under any circumstance. But this liar comes out there and goes, we've always been for pre-existing condition protections, right? And the MAGA goes, oh yeah, man, Trump loves protecting us from pre-existing conditions. That's because you're not smart. Look, to be fair, you're more ignorant than dumb, but probably fits both categories.
So let's move on to tariffs. This is a common lie that we hear from Donald Trump. He repeated it during his rally in New Mexico. He said China is eating the tariffs he has imposed on imports of Chinese products. A bevy of economic studies have found that Americans are bearing the overwhelming majority of the tariff costs, and Americans make the actual tariff payments.
So no one can get through to him on this. Even his top economic advisors, even Larry Kudlow has said, apparently behind the scenes, Mr. President, a tariff is a tax, and American consumers pay that tax, and that's okay. We're raising taxes on the average American, but we think it's for a good reason because China's been cheating and we're gonna punish them. This is from a conservative perspective, right? But China doesn't actually pay the tariffs, Americans do. He's like, no, no, it's not true. I've been saying on TV that China's paying it, so I'm going to keep on saying it. And if you say anything otherwise, he'll fire you. That's why when Kudlow and the other advisors go on television and they're asked by Fox News hosts, isn't it true that Americans pay the tariffs? They're like, well, kinda, right? And they're like, please don't fire me. Please don't fire me for saying something that's true.
Right.
I mean, we have a president who not only doesn't believe in facts, but actively will fire you if you state things that are true.
So another lie that he told, and this again is a repeated lie that you can experience from Donald Trump. He said his border wall is being built fast. As of the end of August, 0 additional miles had been built during Trump's presidency. 60 miles of replacement barriers had been built. Trump has argued that these replacement projects should count as his wall.
Yeah, so one more on the progressive side. Of course, him saying that he's in favor of pre-existing condition protections is a deeply progressive position. So it's funny how Republicans, even Trump knows progressives are more popular than conservatives are. So as he's nearing an election, he's like, I'm progressive, I want to protect you from pre-existing conditions. Remember, during the election in 2016, he said that he was in favor of universal health care. That's Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's positions. Even a lot of the corporate Democrats are like, we can't do universal health care right now, right? And Trump said, no, I'm gonna cover everybody. That was as progressive a position as you could have. Of course, he was lying about it, but in order to win elections, he doesn't always go more conservative. A lot of times he goes way more progressive.
Oh, totally. I mean, think about the populist message that he had during his campaign in 2016. Come on.
And drain the swamp, anti-corruption, that's deeply progressive. The Republican Party is the corruption. And by the way, if you're saying, hey, that's just your opinion. No, Mitch McConnell brags about how he thinks money in politics is great. That Koch brother money, but also George Soros money, any private money, millionaires and billionaires paying off our politicians. Mitch McConnell and the official Republican Party position is, it's fantastic. And they go to court, they put their name on it, and they say, please keep all of the private financing of elections, and that includes Soros. And another progressive positions that he lied about was how the new NAFTA, it's got a new name, USMCA. He said, unions love it. Now you're on the side of the unions. I thought conservatives hated unions. But when you're coming up to an election, all of a sudden, unions love my proposals. Yeah, they love it. What? I thought Americans didn't like unions. That's right, you've been lying the whole time. And as you get closer to election, you get closer to panicking. And by the way, do the unions love it? It is opposed in its current form by almost every major US union. The biggest one, AFL-CIO, has called it, quote, a disaster for workers. So another preposterous lie by Donald Trump. There's so many more, but too many to go through. I'll just give you one last one just because it gives you a sense of how pathological he is. He lies on things he doesn't have to lie about. Things that he could actually say, take some degree of credit for, but he can't leave well enough alone. He's saying, look, the tariffs are also hurting China. And that's actually true. And so in the second quarter of this year, they had their worst growth rate. They've had astounding growth rates over the last couple of decades. They had their worst growth rate in 27 years. But by the way, that also hurts the world economy and eventually our economy. But if you want to quote unquote give him credit for that, fine, right? No, in every speech, even though he has said publicly before he knows the real number is 27 years, he says they had the worst growth in 57 years. Why? Why do you have to lie about that? And there's not even really much material difference between 27 and 57 when you're making a rhetorical point. He does it because he can't help himself. He's a pathological liar that does it by instinct and by nature, even knowing ahead of time it's the wrong number. And even knowing that he'll get caught, he doesn't care. He must lie under any and all circumstances.
When we come back from the break, we're gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about how migration within the United States could be a huge problem for Republicans moving forward.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. I'm going to start with Twitter for a change because these tweets are a little bit more downers. And then we'll lighten it up. No, but you guys are, I mean, obviously I see your point. So anyway, Low Info Voter says, I can't even watch JR's mashups anymore. Trump has made me give up hope in this country, at least for my lifetime. The foundation is rotted. God, I'm telling you, it's not true. I get it. Of course I understand why you're saying that. But stay with me until 2020, brothers and sisters. Stay with me, because I think you're gonna have reason for tremendous optimism, come November of 2020. We're not that far away from it. All right, I Sanchez says, as a Hispanic, I truly find Trump extremely vile, and Hispanics like myself will never forget how his rhetoric has people like me in the crosshairs of white nationalists, separated families, and how he's treated Puerto Rico. Trump needs to be voted out in 2020. Here, brother. Absolutely right. So now, Cloyd in our member section says, Trump's fact checker. That sounds exhausting.
Oh, definitely.
I know.
But at least they're fact checking.
Yeah, in fact, the CNN writer who wrote that said.
Daniel Dale.
Daniel Dale, by the way, has done some great work recently. He said in the beginning of the piece, 26 so far, like in the first count. He's still working on it. Okay, and the speech was last night. So now finally, Brutal Brooders, a hardcore circus writes in.
Wow.
I love this.
Good reference.
Yeah, I'm gonna explain that in a second. Good morning, guys. Watching from Melbourne, Australia while eating breakfast. Can't wait for old school later. I wonder if he's having corn pop. Anyway, Brutal Brooders.
If he's in Australia, maybe Vegemite. That's what it's called, right? That like dark,
apparently
salty substance.
Okay, salty substance sounds like you.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a reference that I make from time to time in old school about certain kind of German films.
Yeah, okay.
That shall not be spoken of.
All right.
The Brutal Brooders.
Okay, we got to move on. He's my boss. He's my boss, guys.
All right. Look, I got to tell you 2 last quick things. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a little blue join button right underneath the videos, whether it's live or normal clips that you watch. Hit that, become a Young Turks member. $1.99 if you just want to support us, get us emojis and badges. But if you go to $9.99 and bless your heart, you get all the benefits of YouTube membership and Young Turks membership, including watching Old School, where we talk about Brutal Brooders, for the whole episode and all of our shows. And I haven't mentioned the town hall in a while, the climate change town hall. We're working on it behind the scenes. I have great updates, but they're all secret, so sorry I can't tell you. But tyt.com/townhall. By the way, we called it town hall to be safe, but we're really working on a debate. So tyt.com/debate also works, and you guys have been fantastic on that. But give us more power and strength on that. We're doing, I think, really good work behind the scenes. I didn't want you to not know that. Okay, all right, what's next?
There are demographic shifts in the United States, and it could spell some trouble for the Republican Party if things keep going the way that they are. Now, some of the millennials in major coastal cities have decided to move away and find more affordable places to live. And so we're seeing an increase in the millennial population in some of these southern red states. And if things play out the way that people are predicting, it could mean that there would be more representation for the left on a federal level, because you'd have more young voters, and young voters do tend to lean left in some of these states that are hardcore red states, right? So let me give you some examples. The New York City metro area is shrinking by 277 people every day. Other areas bleeding thousands of net movers each year include Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, Chicago, Boston, and Baltimore, all in states that routinely vote for Democrats by wide margins. Now, the 5 fastest growing metros of the past few years, Dallas, Phoenix, Houston, Atlanta, and Orlando, Florida, are in states won by Trump. The other metro areas with a population of at least 1 million that grew by at least 1.5% last year were Las Vegas, Austin, Texas, Orlando, Florida, Raleigh, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, Charlotte, North Carolina, San Antonio, Tampa, Florida, and Nashville, Tennessee.
So I want to talk about a couple of phenomenon here, but first I want to give you 2 amazing facts that are the context for this story. One is that apparently Hillary Clinton, and I didn't know this until today, won Manhattan and Brooklyn by 1 million more votes than Trump won Florida, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania combined. So, and that's not all of the state of New York that Hillary Clinton won that by. It's not even all of the city of New York. It's just the 2 boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn. She won it by 1 million more votes than Trump won all of those states combined in terms of his margin. So that gives you a sense of why Democrats being clumped into big cities is problematic. You're always gonna win the state of New York, you're always gonna win the state of California, but you're gonna have trouble in other states, and we don't choose our president by popular vote, which is insane. We do it based on this antiquated electoral college, which by the way was partly done to maintain slavery. And so, and it gives the rural areas in the past, it gave the South a bigger advantage than was merited in a democracy. And now it gives rural areas more of an advantage. So that's why the Republicans are now screwed, that a lot of the Democrats are leaving the cities and going into southern states and more red states. The other amazing fact is, and this is about how absurd the electoral college is, Republicans are expected, and I'm quoting the Atlantic here, are expected to win 65% of presidential contests in which they narrowly lose the popular vote. So if there's a close contest and one side loses the popular vote, 65% of the time, the Republicans will win the electoral college anyway, even if they lose the popular vote. So, well, that is anti-democratic by definition. Now, people will twist themselves in pretzels saying like, oh no, you see, it's actually more of a democracy if less people want you because the votes in Montana matter more than the votes in Rhode Island. What? No, that doesn't make any sense at all.
No, look, so I also used to think that argument had absolutely no merit whatsoever, but I get it, right? So look, we have 2 Americas, let's keep it real. So you have the small town American culture, and then you have these big coastal cities. And the culture in these 2 different groups is very, very different. And so the argument is, well, you need the Electoral College to protect individuals who live in these small towns. Why should it only be the coastal elites that get to make all the decisions about federal representation, our president, all of that? I get that point, but it is by definition undemocratic when you have the minority making the decision about who our president is. Now, I don't know what the right solution is because I do think that the needs of people living in Los Angeles or Manhattan are very different from the needs of people living.
That's right. That's why they have their senators and they have undue power in the Senate because each state, no matter how big or how small, gets 2 senators. That's also mental. It's insane that the tiny amount of people that live in Wyoming get to have the same representation as the state of California, which would be the 6th largest country in the world if it was by itself.
Yeah.
So no, I don't agree to that.
I know. Look,
so look. No. Hold on.
Okay.
So when you say, hey, the elites have too much power, look, I can't stand the elites and their stupid way of thinking, both Republicans and Democratic elites. But not everybody in New York or Los Angeles or Rhode Island or Hawaii are elites. That's preposterous. No, you do not get to have more of a representation in a democracy than I do based on where you live. I don't find your culture in Alabama to be any better than the culture in Los Angeles. In fact, I find it in a lot of ways reprehensible. And if we have more people than you, sad day for you, it's called a democracy. And then they say, well, no, you gotta protect minority rights. Well, isn't that funny? Because you've been fighting against minority rights your whole life.
Look, ultimately,
now you turn around when you're the minority in Alabama and Montana, I need minority rights. I need minority rights.
Look, Cenk, just real quick, I just want to be clear. I'm just telling you what the argument is, and like, I understand that argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, I understand it. And it's not about comparing cultures and determining which culture is better. I'm just pointing that out because we do live in, depending on where you are in the country, you're part of one of two Americas. There are two Americas.
Yes, and our side is larger and we live in a democracy. But apparently we don't because of the goddamn electoral college that's left over from days of slavery.
Well, millennials are gonna save the day.
They are. So now let's talk about, as Anna was alluding to, how the Republicans are screwed. Because one advantage is, hey, I live in these states that people don't want to live in, so I get to have more of a vote than you do. Okay, congratulations to you, by the way. But so now a lot of the voters are moving into those states. Democratic voters are. Why? And this is normal, and it's in a sense the free market. It's because
we can't afford things.
Exactly, these cities are too goddamn expensive, right? So New York and LA and San Francisco are preposterously expensive. We had someone who worked here leave because they were like, hey, if I go to another company that's bigger, they might actually move me to more of a rural state where I can afford to live. And that's fair, and that's why people are leaving. Who could stay in Manhattan? No, it's so unbelievably expensive. So people are leaving all the time to go to the other states, which is great news for Democrats and for democracy, if that's what you actually believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to give you a few case studies, some examples of how things could potentially play out in the future. So if you look at some of the more recent races, in Arizona, for instance, from 2012 to 2016, Democrats narrowed their deficit in Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix, by 100,000 votes. 2 years later, in the 2018 Senate election, the county swung Democratic, with Democrats gaining another 100,000 net votes. Now I want to stop for a second because there are obviously caveats. So can you pinpoint this to a shifting demographic? That could be the main factor, but there are other factors at play as well. Remember, we're in a very unusual political state. We have Donald Trump as president, and he is turning some Republican voters off. So that type of behavior from the executive branch might have, made some Republican voters think, I'm not gonna vote Republican, I'm either gonna stay home or maybe even consider the Democratic candidate. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, Trump won Texas in 2016 by 800,000 votes. He won Arizona by 90,000 votes. He won Georgia by 170,000 votes. If these states' biggest metros continue to move left at the same rate, there is every reason to believe that Texas, Arizona, and Georgia could be a toss-up quite soon.
Okay, so translate to na 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 na. Okay, so look, I know when I say that people lose their minds. No, Cenk, don't be overconfident. I'm never overconfident. I warned you about Trump from day one. So, but in this case, I told you we'd win in a landslide in 2020 for a great number of reasons, but you gotta pick a progressive. You pick another establishment clown like Biden, you risk everything. But look at the demographic shifts. Number one, you have the internal migration. The minute we said migration, by the way, MAGA guys' heads exploded. Oh, I noticed the migrants. No, dude, it's you guys, okay? It's within the country that are moving. So that's phenomenon number one, as we just explained. Number two is the suburbs that Anna's talking about. They hate Trump, and now it's usually overhyped by the Nancy Pelosi crowd. Oh my God, we're gonna win over rich Republicans in the suburbs, and there's 12 of them, like the neocons, etc. But they really are losing women in the suburbs at an alarming rate because of Trump. So that's actually become relevant now. And millennials and Gen Z, I mean, gone. Overwhelmingly progressive. Even in the southern states, even in the reddest states, they've lost their millennials. So now they're in a panic. The writer at The Atlantic had a great phrase for it. They're living off the fumes of retrograde xenophobia. That's exactly right. Trump was the gasp of the last angry white man, okay? And so in 2020, if we pick a progressive that isn't part of the elites, we're gonna steamroll them. And so then I'm so looking forward to their crying and crying. Oh, Google fixed the election. Oh my God, millions of Mexicans came over and they're not real voters. You cry all day long. And then you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna change the Electoral College because it's undemocratic. And then we're gonna wish you a lot of good luck. Oh my God, they wanted a real democracy that every vote's gonna count the same. Can you believe how manipulative the Democrats are? Oh.
Not only do I love how you always have a prediction, but you like to act out the predictions.
Yes, because they're fun. And you know what I love
thespian.
to do? Yeah, thank you. I love to make fun of right-wingers.
Oh, I know.
Because they richly, richly deserve it.
All right, well, when we come back, we will not make fun of right-wingers because we have a story from Emma Vigeland. She attended a speech that Elizabeth Warren gave on corruption, and she spoke to some of Warren's supporters to ask them why they support Warren over Bernie Sanders. We're gonna give you those videos and more when we return.
Drums.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.